This is good enough for a worthless employee. My wife and I were invited to a gathering at her workplace. However, when we arrived at the venue, we found trash cans placed where our chairs should have been. Confused by the situation, we were approached by my wife's supervisor, who was grinning slyly. I prepared something just right for a worthless employee like you. I couldn't contain my anger at such a demeaning attitude, as if he was denying my wife's very worth. When he even started mocking someone we both respected, I finally reached my breaking point. Then, my usually gentle wife, visibly angry, turned to a junior employee and said, "Could you call Mr. Irwin, please?" A short while later, Mr. Irwin arrived, and we greeted him. Upon seeing the situation before him, Mr. Irwin asked what was going on. The truth he revealed shortly after left the supervisor pale as a sheet. My name is Thomas. I'm a 56-year-old business owner, living with my wife. My wife, Emily, is 6 years younger than me and currently works for a different company than mine. I met Emily about 30 years ago through a mutual friend. Despite the slight age difference, we hit it off due to our shared hobbies, and here we are today. We have 2 sons, both of whom are married and have their own families. I plan to have my eldest son take over my business one day, so he's currently learning the ropes at my company. There's a place I go almost every weekend without fail. Margaret, thanks again for your help today. I really appreciate you coming to lend a hand as always. Her name is Margaret, a 70-year-old woman who runs a bento shop. She used to run the shop with her husband, but he passed away from an illness a few years ago, and now she manages it alone. Margaret has been helping me since I was a student, often selling me bentos at a discount when I was struggling financially. She's helped many people like me, and her shop, loved by regulars and locals alike, has continued to thrive. On this day, I was helping out as usual when a man walked into the shop around noon. He looked around the shop and sneered, saying, "What is this place? It's so outdated." This rude man's name is George, and he's Emily's supervisor. At 34 years old, he's already a department head in sales. His wife, Grace, is the daughter of the company's president, and it's said he'll take over the company one day. But no matter what his position, I can't overlook such disrespectful comments about the shop. So I decided to speak up. "Excuse me, but isn't it rude to be so disrespectful right when you walk in? Oh, so this shop insults its customers now? I guess when the shop's like this, the employees are just as low class," George said, without the slightest hint of remorse. Judging by his attitude, this must be his first time here. How could someone act like this in a place they've never been to before? I almost want to respond with exactly the words he said. Furthermore, George continued speaking in his condescending attitude without changing. "I came to buy a bento at Grace's request, but you better serve decent bento. If you serve something bad, this shop is finished." George said that, grinning down at me in a scornful manner. Even though he shouldn't have such authority, his behavior made it seem like he thought the world revolved around him. Just because he has the position of next president, I can't like someone who acts so blatantly arrogant. I was so pissed off that I tried to retort, but Margaret stopped me. Then, with a gentle smile, she said to George, "I'm sorry if the shop looks old and offends you. I'll make the bento cheaper, so could you forgive us with that?" George, seemingly pleased by Margaret's obsequious attitude, chuckled and glanced over, saying, "The old woman understands your position much better. Hey, old man, you should properly learn customer service attitude." Saying that, he took the handed bento and left the shop. To me, who was still irritable, Margaret said with a smile, "You shouldn't take such a thing seriously." People who are just conceited about their position should be let off easily. I see, that's enlightening. Seeing that Margaret was completely unfazed, I couldn't help but smile wryly, thinking I still have a long way to go. After returning home, I told Emily about what happened at the bento shop, and she showed a look of exasperation. Apparently, George also behaves arrogantly at the company. She has warned him a few times, but it seems he lashed out instead. Conversely, he behaves nicely in front of superiors and grace. The other employees don't speak up strongly because George is the next president, but internally, they don't think highly of him. Since he is going to lead the company someday, it would be a problem if he doesn't calm down a bit. Saying that, Emily sighed. Then, after some time passed, one day, a meeting was being held at Emily's company, and President Irwin insisted that I attend as well. Of course, with no reason to refuse, I decided to attend the meeting. On the day of the meeting, upon entering the venue, we greeted the acquaintances who were also invited and headed to our assigned seats. But in the next instant, an unbelievable scene confronted us. To our surprise, the chairs that should have been at our seats were missing, replaced by trash cans. What is this? Emily, have you heard something? No, nothing. Even as a joke, this is too much. As we were puzzled, George approached us. Finally, you showed up, you worthless employee. So, you're the old man of the bento shop, right? You can't be the husband of this old lady. Can you? George said that, looking down on us. Furthermore, grinning widely, he began to talk about the trash can. What do you think? The surprise I prepared was a huge hit, wasn't it? Was he serious about saying that? This isn't a surprise, it's just harassment, and no matter how you think about it, it's nothing but unpleasant. With George showing no signs of remorse, Emily confronted him. George, why are you doing this to us? Of course, it's obvious, isn't it? I prepared the perfect seats for a worthless employee like you. Having a trash can as a seat is just absurd. His statements, as if denying our very personality, made us unable to contain our anger. So this is the seat. Don't mess with me. This is enough for a worthless employee. George remained unmoved by my angry shout and said that. I have many things I want to say about his behavior and attitude, but above all, it's infuriating that he has been calling Emily a worthless employee since earlier. In the first place, Emily has been working diligently at the current company for nearly 30 years. Though it's my own opinion, it's no exaggeration to call her a significant contributor who has supported the sales department for many years. In fact, there are no shortage of junior employees who visit me out of admiration for her. I couldn't accept someone calling her a worthless employee. Tell me exactly why my wife deserves to be called worthless. Pressing him further, George looked down on me and said with contempt, "This old woman keeps nitpicking at the way I do things. Anyone who talks back to their boss is automatically worthless." What an immature response. Emily has been trying to correct him because he's supposed to be the future leader of the company. Yet he dismisses it as backtalk and resorts to this kind of harassment. It made me seriously question if someone like him should ever become CEO. Just then, Emily, who had been silent until now, spoke up with a serious expression. "George, you're going to be leading this company. If you behave like this, no one will follow you, and you won't be able to protect your employees." Her words were not meant to be confrontational. Emily has often expressed her affection for the company, and she was genuinely concerned for its future. At the same time, those words were meant out of concern for George's future. However, it seemed that he didn't understand that at all, as he clicked his tongue in annoyance and said irritably, "Why can't you just take a hint? It's you who's disrupting the department by constantly defying your superior." If his claim were true, no one would respect Emily. But in reality, she's the one who's truly admired, not him. I'm sure if you asked anyone in the sales department, they wouldn't have a bad word to say about her. Is it really necessary to make her a target just because she offered a little criticism? As I was pondering this, George said something utterly shocking. "Honestly, I've always thought you were in the way. I'm supposed to be the head of this department, but everyone likes you instead. And it pisses me off." I finally understood. He's simply jealous of Emily. Given his position, no one likely criticizes him much, but he's not genuinely respected like Emily is. Listening to her juniors who visit us, it's clear they don't think highly of George. He must have been bothered by someone more respected than him speaking up, which is why he resorted to such petty harassment. But of course, I couldn't possibly accept this behavior. I finally reached my breaking point and raised my voice. "Enough! What you did here and at the bento shop is unbelievably out of line." In response to my words, George retorts like this: "Oh, please. A guy who's been cast out by society has no right to lecture someone like me. You're probably working at that bento shop because you can't find a job anywhere else, right?" It seems he assumed I was an employee at Margaret's shop. But even if I were, insulting a place that had nothing to do with this was beyond forgivable. Ignoring my reaction, George continued, "A husband who has to rely on a worthless employee is just as worthless, right? You weren't even invited to this gathering in the first place. I never expected him to go this far." Even Emily, who is usually calm, seemed to have reached her limit. She turned to a nearby junior employee and said, "Could you call Mr. Irwin, please?" The junior immediately left to fetch Mr. Irwin. "Oh, you're going to tattle to Mr. Irwin? I'm the future CEO, and who do you think is going to side with an old woman like you?" George had a triumphant smile on his face. He was completely unaware that he was about to be brought down to rock bottom. A short while later, a man approached us. It was none other than the company president, Mr. Benjamin Irwin. At his arrival, the employees around us immediately bowed their heads. "Relax, everyone, no need to be so formal." But more importantly, the moment Mr. Irwin, the company president, started to say something, he turned his gaze towards me, slowly walked over, and suddenly threw his arm around my shoulder. "Tom, you made it. I was ready to drag you out of your house if you hadn't." "Oh, come on, like I'd miss it with our history?" "But seriously, Benjamin, have you put on more weight again?" As we exchanged this light-hearted banter, George, who had been so full of himself just moments ago, stood there with his mouth agape, completely stunned. "Mr. Irwin, do you know this man? Hey! How dare you refer to our major shareholder as this man?" George's eyes widened in surprise at Mr. Irwin's words. "Yes, in fact, I am the major shareholder of this company and have been Mr. Irwin's close friend since our college days. Back in our student days, when we were both studying business management, we quickly hit it off and became inseparable. We pushed each other to achieve our dream of owning our own companies, and now, we both have. Because of our bond, when his company went public, I invested by buying shares. By the way, it was Mr. Irwin who introduced me to Emily, saying she was an outstanding employee with a good heart, and that's how we met. Because of his endorsement, I knew for certain that Emily was a key contributor to the company." Now understanding the situation, George's face turned pale. And rightly so. The person he had been belittling and mocking turned out to be someone vital to the company. Mr. Irwin then noticed the trash cans placed at our seats and asked why they were there. Fearing for his position, George quickly spoke up. "Hey! Who set up this prank? It's disrespectful to the major shareholder." I couldn't help but feel astonished at how easily he flipped his attitude, having looked down on us just moments ago. It was clear from the cold stares around him that others felt the same. He was probably hoping to pin the blame on someone else and pretend he wasn't involved. But neither Emily nor I were going to let that happen. "George, stop pretending. You're the one who orchestrated all of this, aren't you?" "What? You have no proof." At this point, his denials were beyond pathetic. With so many witnesses around, any attempt to cover up the truth was pointless. Then, a female employee spoke up, saying she had evidence, and pulled out her smartphone. She had recorded the entire incident. This employee was one of Emily's subordinates, who often visited our home. We treated her like a daughter, as she was close in age to our sons. Apparently, she couldn't stand by and watch us be harassed, so she secretly recorded everything as evidence. As George's self-sabotage was laid bare, he began to panic, while Mr. Irwin glared at him. Just then, Grace arrived, bringing Margaret with her. "What's going on here? What's all this commotion about?" "Nothing but trouble. George has done something outrageous," Mr. Irwin replied, and he began explaining what had transpired. Grace sighed, as if she had expected something like this. Meanwhile, George turned to her and asked, "Hey, Grace, why did you bring that old woman from the bento shop here?" "Why?" "Because Margaret is an important person. She's my father's benefactor and she provides bento for our company cafeteria." Yes, just like me, Mr. Irwin had also been supported by Margaret during his student days. He had always said that if he ever started a company, he wanted to serve her bento in his cafeteria. That's how deeply he felt indebted to her, and he followed through on that promise. Even after becoming president, Mr. Irwin continued to visit her shop regularly, and Grace had known Margaret since she was a child. "George, Margaret told me everything. Apparently, when I asked you to buy a bento the other day, you insulted her, Tom, and the shop." "And no, that's not." Margaret might have said she'd let it slide at the time, but she made sure to tell those who needed to know. "How could you look down on so many people and think that's acceptable?" Even George couldn't afford to act nonchalant in the face of Mr. Irwin's anger. He was visibly cowering. As if that wasn't enough, Grace glared at George and began to reveal a shocking truth. "George, don't you have something to confess? Like about your relationships with other women, perhaps?" Her words caused a stir in the room. Everyone except George, who was now pale with fear, was stunned. Grace then began to share the details. Recently, Grace had noticed that George had been coming home late and behaving suspiciously. Suspicious of his behavior, Grace hired an investigator, which led to the discovery that he was involved with another woman. The woman was a hostess from a club he frequented, and there was solid evidence showing the two of them going to hotels and taking trips together. Moreover, the audio data of conversations between George and his partner contained shocking content. He had been planning to divorce Grace and be with his partner after becoming the company president. Everyone was stunned by the sheer audacity of his scheme. "This is all a lie. Someone's trying to set me up," George protested desperately. "Oh, really? Then can you explain where the money you expensed as company costs actually went?" Grace asked, her tone sharp. The room buzzed with renewed tension. Apparently, There was an amount that had been expensed without a clear explanation of its use. It was filed under George's name, with the details listed as entertainment for clients and travel expenses. But it was revealed that these were fabricated. It was likely that he had embezzled the funds to spend on his mistress. George, sweating profusely, averted his gaze, unable to defend himself. It was clear that everything Grace had accused him of was true. The thought of being mocked by such a man only fueled my anger. "You've spent so much time belittling others, but it seems the real worthless employee isn't my wife, it's you." George had no retort this time, his silence speaking volumes. Mr. Irwin and Grace, now visibly enraged, confronted him. "You deceived my daughter, disrespected others, and brought harm to this company. You have no place here. If you want a divorce so badly, you'll get it. But don't ever show your face to us again." Despite George's desperate apologies, there was no forgiveness. He was forcibly removed from the venue. Mr. Irwin then went around apologizing to the other employees and guests for the disruption. After things had settled down, I approached Mr. Irwin and Grace to check on them. Surprisingly, they seemed to be in good spirits. In fact, they were relieved to have uncovered the truth and dealt with the situation before it escalated further. Mr. Irwin had always been unshakable, and it was clear that Grace had inherited this trait as well. As we talked, Margaret, who had been watching us, spoke up. "You two have really grown up. Nowadays, it seems I'm the one being helped by you all the time. We're sorry for making you uncomfortable, Margaret." Mr. Irwin and Grace bowed their heads to Margaret once again, but she just laughed, saying she was satisfied because everyone had protected her. And it was refreshing to see George put in his place. In the end, George was arrested for embezzlement. Naturally, he was fired from the company, and his mistress left him as well. Mr. Irwin made it clear that there would be no out-of-court settlement, so George's fate would be decided in court. A few years later, after passing my business on to my son, Emily, and I took over Margaret's bento shop. We had been considering this for a while since we often helped out at the shop, and with Margaret wanting to retire, she was happy to let us take over. Our goal is to preserve the flavors Margaret created and to make the shop even more beloved by the local community. And so, a new chapter in our lives began.